I raced a pretty expensive car this past January at the Rolex 24 at Daytona in a Lamborghini.
Is it the car itself that's expensive, or the act of racing it that's expensive?
Literally everything. Every part of it's expensive. There's a reason sports car racing is for the gentleman racer, because the cost I've been absolutely blown away by the cost of IMSA and sports car racing. The budgets for a GTD car, all season IMSA, which is like 10 races, is the same as a top level Xfinity car, which runs 33 races.
Why?
Yet there's no prize money.
None. Who's paying for all this?
I have no idea. I don't even understand where any of it's coming from. I really don't. I was like sitting there and just like, who's funding all this? But the manufacturers are big in it. You know, they help a ton. So the team at Forte that I drove for is a Lamborghini factory team, or not factory, but like factory customer. I don't know how they term it, but they get a lot of help from Lamborghini, and all those.
Which really
do.
just means, and I'm not being sarcastic at all. So they're not a factory team; they're a factory customer. So what that really means is Lamborghini is just let them into the club to be able to buy the latest and greatest equipment, right?
Somewhat like that, but then
because there's another level down, isn't there? Of
I don't think so. I think if you commit to a full program, you're kind of like in the deal. It's sort of like almost like having an alliance, right? With a bigger cup team sort of thing. But you get engineering support. Sometimes they place factory drivers. So like all these manufacturers and sports cars have a roster of drivers. Like Lamborghini has, I don't know, 10, 15, 20 drivers who are considered factory Lamborghini drivers. They get a salary from Lamborghini, and they literally just get told to go anywhere in the world. So it might be the Bathurst 12-hour, and they're like, hey, you need to go there and race for this team. It might be DTM, which now runs GT3 cars, or GT World, or SRO, or IMSA, or Le Mans, or the 24 hours of Spa. Like, they just get kind of told, and they have a little bit of say, but they also then get, sometimes allocated like, hey, you're going to run a full IMSA season with this team. You're the driver.
Interesting.
Have fun. And
so the manufacturer subsidizes that?
Yeah, they'll pay for that driver and everything. So that's sort of what the career path is for a pro driver in that area, in that realm. Sometimes you have pro drivers who are hired by the team directly, and then obviously you have the gentleman drivers who primarily fund most of this, right? You have the wealthy businessman,
which is what I want to say.
Yeah, the saying. Every pro driver's dream should be to get rich and go sports car racing. So, and to be the gentleman driver. You want to be the gentleman driver, trust me. That's where it's at. But it was super cool. It's been a bucket list for me, man, and it was such a cool experience. We were down there forever. We did 2 days of testing in December where I got used to the car, and then you're down there for the Roar, but you get down there a couple days before that. So I was down there for like 12 days straight, basically, with 2 days where I went a day. Basically, I went up for CW Media Day for the Xfinity Series. But then you're just there a ton, but there's a lot of on-track time, but because there's 4 drivers and you're rotating through as you run through the practice, you actually don't get a lot of time in the car. Like, because there's all sorts of different things you're trying to accomplish, and there's only so many tires, so you might get in the car 3 days into the practice or the Roar and be on 100-mile tires or whatever, or even worse. And it's just like, hey, go do 5 to 10 laps, and then we're going to do a driver change. Tell us what you think. And it's like, okay, done. Wow. So then, like, you get in, and you're like, well, was I fast? And it's like, no way to tell because you're on these tires that no one else has run on. And so it's just it's an interesting game in that sense. They also had this whole new energy management system deal that came into GT that's similar to the hypercars. So that was crazy. But on the whole event was so cool. I just felt like I was 16 because this is what I wanted to do when I was so young. And I did enjoy driving the car. The cars are insane. Like, they have ABS, so you can just smash the brake pedal. And I think I told you this, and I said it in a lot of places, but you know how, like, in a stock car, your peak brake pressure is like 1,250 pounds at a road course. In these cars, with the ABS, you can get as high as 2,000 pounds and do it in like a millisecond. But that means you have to literally like take your leg and smash the brake pedal as hard as you possibly can at the end of the straightaway, which is really hard. So it's just, the normal pros, they're getting to 1,500 to 1,800 pounds in high braking brake zones. So it's just
if you were to race that full time, do you literally think that you need to do more leg presses in the gym?
100%. I'd have to you'd have to get that fast twitch muscle fiber and your leg to be stronger. And then the other thing you've got to do is get past the mental gap, because when I did the test, we didn't have data on the first day. There was all this new electronics they were trying to work through. Mm-hmm. So I didn't get to see, but I was creating good lap time. I was pretty fast, but I knew I probably wasn't hitting hard enough. But I was telling myself, hit the brake harder than you ever thought. Hit it harder than you ever thought. And so we finally get data on the second day, and we get done, whatever, and I went pretty fast. But my peak brake pressure was 1,250 pounds.
Really? So you're like another 300 pounds, and I could just go faster.
Exactly. And the thing is, that's exactly what I know for the last 15 years in a stock car. So, mentally, I've got to get my brain to, hey, you can hit it harder. Even though you think you're hitting as hard as you know that you should hit the brake, go harder.
So are you telling me that at 1,200 pounds of brake pressure in that car, you're not at threshold on the tire?
Not even close. You're not getting into the ABS enough. What you want to do is you just get it hit as hard as you can and get it into the ABS. So then you start to feel like the tire shuddering and doing all this stuff, but that's where the computer is doing the work for you in the brake zone. And then you want to tail out of that and release it from the ABS as you get to the center of the corner to allow the car to turn. It's funky. Really funky. And then there's all the different there's all the other tools you have for traction control and all this shit that's crazy. So there's just so much going on. It's so different. The funny thing you'll also laugh at is our mentality in stock car racing or dirt racing and everything we know in that oval world is if the car's not doing what you want, go and drive it differently, change your line, find a different way to drive it. For these cars, your first move is not to change you. It's okay, change the engine braking setting, change the TC setting, change the TC lat, change this thing, and see if you can get the car to react differently before you change what you're doing in the car.
Why is that?
Because you have so many tools. So you want to drive it to the max, what would be considered the perfect way to drive it, but then make the car, the gizmos in the car.
So then are you
saying
that in sports car racing, because there's so many in-car tools for the driver, that you can adapt the car to your driving style?
Slightly.
I mean, it's still within reason.
Yeah, within reason. But I'm just saying, if you start to get understeer in the center of the corners, your first move isn't to back up your braking zone. Your first move is to then say, okay, well, what can I change setting-wise? Yeah, what can I change the engine braking? Can I change the brake bias? Can I change the TC lat as I get into the throttle, and it will allow the car to rotate more in the center and that sort of thing. So it's just it's a different mentality than what we've known forever. Which is super cool.
That's interesting. I love that. And I could see that because when first of all, the closest I've ever had to something like that is when Cup had adjustable track bars.
Oh yeah, yep.
and actually even more so than that, when Cup had adjustable track bars and we had a flapper on the side window hose, we could shift the aero balance.
Yep.
And it was interesting to me when I'd raced with adjustable track bars for 2 years or however long it was that we raced with them. And you got so used to always having it. And yeah, you had to ask for adjustments and pit stops still and give lots of feedback, but you always had that track bar adjustment, right? And I found that a lot of tracks, you would just adjust it over the course of a run. Shoot, at Richmond one time, I touched it every single lap because the tire fall off was so dramatic and the balance swing was so dramatic. Every lap coming off of turn 2, I would just lower the track bar like 1/10 of an inch, right? because it was the next corner was always going to be a little bit looser than the last one. So it was just every corner I just lowered it 1/10 of an inch. And then when they took the adjustable track bar away, it was well, I don't have that tool anymore. I guess I got to go back to adjusting my driving style.
You remember?
I can see that. If and here's the other thing too is, especially at a professional level, even at a higher level than what you were at, right? Because this was your first time.
Yep.
At a really, really high level, when you drive these Lamborghinis for a living, right, and you're a factory driver, and you know that car better than anybody, you've been in the sim and all that stuff, you're driving it, you have to assume that you're already driving it to the 99th percentile, right? Mm-hmm. So now you have all these tools at your disposal. Just start tinkering.
Actually, I saw that. So that our factory Lambo driver at the Rolex was Frank Pereira, who used to be the test driver for Toyota and F1 for many years and has done all sorts of big endurance races and just done everything. He did IndyCar, he did Atlantic, super fast. One of the fastest drivers I think I've ever seen in my life. And he was automatic, man, in this car. Like, he'd hop in and be 7 to 8 tenths faster than any of us by just, like, didn't matter. And you'd look at his data and just be like, how's he doing that? And then you'd just be like, I'm not going to get there.
What were you missing?
There was many areas. In terms of pure lap time, I probably wasn't that far off, but my biggest issue was traffic. And not the LMP car, not the GTP cars and the LMP2s and that sort of thing. My biggest struggle was, I did a majority of my running in the nighttime. So I got in the car right as the sun was setting, which, by the way, I got to tell you the story of like getting in for my first time to a live driver change. We're in the lead, first of all. All the cameras show up, right, around me from like the trackside cameras, the NBC broadcast. Everyone knew I was getting in the car. And the team manager turns to me and he go, like, you can tell I'm like a little antsy, and he's like, "Hey man, just get in." And I'm like, yeah, I know, but like, I don't want to screw this up because we're in the lead. It's a live driver change, which you do the driver change in roughly 15 to 20 seconds, and the pit stop is 40 seconds. But the only, if you do it well, which you do so much practice, if you do it well, that's plenty of time because you're buckled in and sort of settled by 20 seconds, 25 seconds. And then you have time to kind of adjust your belts, get them tighter, get the wheel set, get the pedals in the right position, get your other settings, and then they tell you, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and you rip off. But where that goes awry is if you ever have an issue and you panic, you'll lose 10 seconds in what seems like a second. So, you just want to, just do it smoothly, be almost purposely slower than you think you need to be, and you're faster. But I get in, whatever. My first runs were sunset into nighttime, and then I did a lot of running in the nighttime because I was supposed to be done by 2 or 3 in the morning, and then I would be back in the morning, when it became sunrise again. But when we got through the nighttime, I was losing a bit of time in traffic where on my first restart, I was in the lead, and I got swamped by this Porsche, and then I got batted around by a bunch of GT3 pros, where I knew what I needed to do in traffic with ABS and everything, where you can be so close to the car in front of you, if that makes sense, compared to maybe what we do in braking zones a little bit. And you can just stay so close to the cars around you. But I knew we also were in a position where we could win this race. And my objective was not
to give it a car length here and a car length there.
Exactly. But when you give up a car length, you start doing that, and you do that over an hour stint, you lose 10 seconds to the leader. Now, if I stay within 10 seconds of the leader every time, I've done my job, wholeheartedly, and I'm good. So I got done at 5 in the morning, 5:30 in the morning. In my last runs, I was always within 10 seconds of the leader, so I wasn't really pushing it, right? But I saw if it was a sprint race, I had one moment where I went to go 3 wide for the lead or second place on that first run, and I ended up I knew in a sprint race, I was like, I just outbraked them in the bus stop. I've got this. But me being like, hey, this is your first 24, and this car could definitely win the race. This is not the time to do it. It was and back out, right? So that was tough for me, but in the end, it was super cool. We ended up getting wrecked. I woke up right before we got wrecked in this big wreck on a restart that was none of our doing and just wrong place, wrong time. But then I went and did the TV booth, and I did a bunch of TV as well. But when I got done with this whole thing, by the way, I was up when I finally went to bed Sunday night because I went to dinner with my family and all this stuff. I was up for 39 hours.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I was so dead.
Brutal.
Then I got sick on Monday. Weird.
Yeah, you had the flu for a week.
Yeah, it knocked me out. Everyone was sick around the Rolex, even everything leading up. So when we got done with the season last year, I started taking vitamins every day, tons of vitamins. And I was like, I know I can't get sick in the next 2 months. This is just not allowed. I had too much going on. And we get to the week of the race, and everyone is sick down at the Rolex. Everyone's got the flu or cough or something, and I'm just taking my vitamins. And I said to myself, I'm like, hey, body, you can get as sick as you want come Monday, but you've got to survive through this weekend. And sure enough, I get to the race. On Monday night, my throat feels like it's on fire, and I had the flu. And I was like, yeah, well, it listened.